and scene. Okay, so I'm going to welcome everyone to the virtual tour for Imagination Doctors. I'm so thrilled to be here together. Just a couple of quick words about the virtual tour experiment. This is something we've been doing, a collaboration between Gallery 400 and the UIC Disability Cultural Center. We've been doing this since 2021, which is kind of great.
Yeah.
We just leveled up on our equipment. So we're so excited about that. So excited to have you all with us. But we're really trying to just experiment with really radical forms of accessibility. So the fact that you all can be joining us from wherever you are is a big piece of that. Also offering things like captioning and verbal descriptions along the way. So let us know what you think. Please feel free to interrupt us as we go along. We're happy to adjust to make this a good experience for everyone. With that, I'm just going to offer a couple of invitations. First of all, make yourself comfortable wherever you are. If you want to have your camera on or off, you're welcome to. We are recording, so if that changes how you want to be present, just a heads up. We have captioning going in this space. So if you'd like to use that, you can go to the CC button in your Zoom and select Show Captions. And as we move from piece to piece, we're going to turn the camera off. Because some people, it's a little bit of an accessibility issue to have like movement and jiggliness. So that's what that's about. And yeah, that's all in terms of accessibility invitations and announcements. Would anybody like to chime in if there's any adjustments that we should make before we keep going? Okay, I think we're good. That's an open invitation, so just let us know if we should change anything as we go along. Thank you. We're going to be interdependent. I'm getting my flipper held for me. Okay, so just to introduce myself, my name is Margaret Fink. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the director of the Disability Cultural Center. And to quickly describe myself, I'm a white woman with brown hair, hoop earrings. I'm wearing kind of a dark floral dress and a cardigan, and I am speaking to a microphone that's attached to a big black scuba flipper from the ProArt prop chest, which I love. Okay, I'm going to introduce my colleagues, William and Denny. Hi.
Everyone, my name is William Estrada. I'm a Mexican-American cis male, and I have brown caramel skin with brown, black curly hair that is in a bun right now. I'm wearing yellow glasses, have earrings, septum piercing, and I'm wearing a gray bandana with a black graphic tee.
Super. I'm Denny Mwaura. I am the assistant director and co-curator of this exhibition. I am a dark-skinned African man with a white long sleeve top and short black hair. Thanks.
Yay. Okay, so this is Margaret speaking again. Just for the general flow, we're going to be going around to check out different pieces. But again, I will be offering verbal descriptions. So for example, right now, we are standing kind of in the entrance to the show. We're in the Gallery 400 main space, standing next to a really beautiful, really colorful ofrenda. Above us is a garland of bright yellow, orange marigolds, and the table has like a black velvet underskirt and brightly colored tablecloth with a pennant of multicolored skulls and just like a bunch of photographs of beloved ProArt members. They're framed with tin and sort of colored. There's a bunch of notes. There's all kinds of offerings like snacks and candy. But yeah, so it's a beautiful way to kind of be greeted when you come into this space. And I think the first thing we're going to do is move over and check out a zine that William created.
All right, so now we're transitioning.
Or you were going to do the visual descriptions? I'm going to hold the...
I'll make it brief.
Oh, do you want to move over here?
I'm just making sure back on camera.
Yes, we're good. We're good.
Okay, great. Oh, wonderful. Hi, everyone. Okay, so we're here in front of the installation of William's zine, which is called We Call Artists. And you can use it a couple of ways. There's a poster and one sort of rendition of it. It's got big block letters in blue that say We Call Artists for community and creativity. Oh, it looks like Denny's coming close. Okay, and then on the other side is a zine layout. It's really beautiful. It's mostly text, which maybe we'll talk about. But in the background, there's some sort of pink images of people doing like the play that Pose Art Studios are inviting them to do. And then there's sort of a very pale aqua doodles of a mask and some flowers and some geometric shapes.
Awesome. We'll just use this mic between the two of us. Yeah, and then you can just have that one. All right. So I'm Denny, like I mentioned, I'm one of the co-curators of this exhibition. I'll talk a little bit about how this exhibition came about. We've known Prose Art for the past, maybe like 4 or 5 years. And we came to know about them because we did an exhibition called Learning Together, Art Education and Community, which was about the history of art education from the mid 1960s until the mid 2010s. And so Prose Arts became a part of that exhibition. We did an oral history about their work here in Chicago. I think William is the person who connected us with Prose Arts. I might be wrong, but I can't remember for the life of me who connected us with them. And they created an installation for the exhibition, which was a number of wallpapers with events that they did throughout the years. And for this exhibition, we wanted to reanimate their archive. And so we invited 9 artists to create a new body of work that speaks to their history and their ethos, ranging from ephemerality, silliness, embeddedness, collectivity, community. And William Estrada is a professor here at UIC in the School of Art and Art History, and he teaches in the art education department. And he was a member of arts and a teaching artist of Prose Arts. So William, could you tell us about your work with Prose Arts and why you decided to make this work that takes the form of poster and a zine to think about their history?
Thank you, Denny. This is William Estrada speaking. Yeah, a lot of the work that I started to do, I started working with them when I was an undergraduate. I was 19 years old when I first started working with them. And one of the things that I was really excited about was that they were one of the first organizations, community organizations, that were really receptive to really thinking about how do we enter spaces that are not our own, and how do we invite people into the conversations around the things that we want to create, how much budget we have or how much budget we don't have. What are the things that the community members need that are participating? And then how do we adjust as artists, and what is our responsibility as artists to the people that we're working with, but also to the folks that are going to experience the work that we're generating. And one of the things that I was really interested in is that at that particular time in Pilsen and across Chicago, there was a lot of posters that were being distributed that said, "We call the police." And Prose Arts created a counter poster that said, "We call Prose Arts." And we would see it all across the neighborhood, right? There was a lot of the family members, a lot of community members that were familiar with Prose Arts or that supported the arts in the community had them in their window. And the zine was a reminiscent of that moment, right? Of who are the artists that we call in our community when we need to reimagine the things that we want to exist in our neighborhood, right? When there's problems that are happening in our neighborhood, who are the people, who are the artists that are going to help us, reimagine how we're going to resolve these problems through creative means. I think it's something that Prose Arts was always very present in and part of larger conversations around, what are the spaces that we need for each other? What are the things that exist? And Prose Arts was born out of that as well, right? Both Jean, Ruth, and Lionel were artists that there wasn't tons of arts programming in Pilsen when they first started in 1978. And a lot of the work that they did at St. Procopius Church was in response, right, to the needs that they saw from the families and the community members that they were working with. So this scene is in honor of that work and of the continuous work, right, that Prose Arts, along with many other community arts organizations, are taking up, right, and thinking about what is the role of the artist in thinking about problem solving and, inviting folks to imagine and reclaim their creativity as a way to solve the things that are, happening in the neighborhood. And there is a lot of text, like Mark mentioned, and some of that text is really, instructions and questions, and I'll read a little bit of that, right? Like some of the first ones, like, how do you invite and include community members in the planning, designing, and creation of your art project? How are artists from the community and those who are interested in community are part of the process in your work? And this is a lot for artists and arts organizations to consider. What are the ways in which you are encouraging imagination to practice and build the worlds we want for each other? Where are you creating opportunities and encouraging participants of all ages to celebrate curiosity through play? And this was really about thinking about how do we engage multi-generational and intergenerational communities. And then some of the other ones, we'll flip it a little bit, is, when are you educating, or when are you dedicating time to knowing the community, the places that bring joy, creating opportunities to slow the work for things to grow organically over time? And then what are the possibilities of what we can create together? And how does elasticity, that flexibility, allow the needs and wants and dreams of those involved become part of the collective process? And these were all taken from the many conversations I got to work with Prose Arts for over 12 years. And a lot of my work as a community artist was really grounded by my experience with them, and I love them dearly, and they're big mentors as part of my practice as an educator, as a community artist, as a human being. But a lot of these questions were really questions that were formulated and we were consistently asked to think about, right? When we were thinking about programming, when we were thinking about the types of artwork that we wanted to make, and when we would go into the classrooms, and also when we were doing programming out in the community itself.
Thank you, William. Prose Arts has this long history. They started out in 1978 in Pilsen. They were rooted in Pilsen and are still there. That's where the archive is. Could you actually tell us about how you came to hear about Prose Arts and some of the programming that you've done with them in schools and also outside schools as well, too?
Yeah, I first learned about Prose Arts. I was a student at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, where I was in class with a colleague, Jesus Macarena, which was at the time working with Prose Arts, and I was trying to figure out what education looked like outside of Chicago public schools. And Jesus was actually the one that introduced me to Prose Arts, and it was like, there's these artists that are doing this work in the neighborhood that I think you would really benefit from meeting. And I went to one of the meetings. I think I actually went to one of the theater performances, introduced myself, and asked them, like, how can I get more involved? How can I learn, right, to be a teacher or an artist working in the program? Were very welcoming. Jean was actually the one, like, just show up and we'll put you to work. And that's what I did, right? I just started showing up and going through that process. I worked for many years at Walsh Elementary, where I was working with young people to build set designs and doing the design of the sets, building the sets, and then looking at maneuvering how we were moving the set around as the performance was happening. I also painted various murals at St. Procopius with third, fourth, and fifth graders. We did a lot of programming at Dvorak Park, where Pros Arts would do a lot of programming as well. And we would do a lot of programming through printmaking, through a lot of the performance, where they were doing a lot of the clown spectacles. And at that particular time, I did a lot of performance as well. We were doing street theater. And a lot of the work that I learned how to do was because of the work that I was doing at Pros Arts.
That's awesome. I should also mention that a good chunk of the artists in this exhibition are people who don't know or personally know Pros Arts. There's only 3 artists who primarily worked with Pros Arts, which is William, Maria Gaspar, and Alan Medina, who was in a workshop, in a mural workshop in 2004, 2002. I think it was in 4th grade. And Alan worked with us here for learning together as a public programs manager for the exhibition. And he went to the Pros Arts Archive and they asked him about where he's from. And just like from that exchange, he couldn't remember the workshop, the mural making workshop, but Gene and the crew literally pulled out. Yeah. They literally pulled out a program and showed him his name and photographs, and it all came back. And I mean, we also invited him to be a part of this exhibition, which unfortunately we won't be able to see the film that he created for this exhibition, but it goes to speak to their memory, the way that they can remember their neighbors and the way that their neighbors and Pilsen has been so crucial to their community and all. I'm just gonna ask for anybody who's in the Zoom to kindly mute themselves, and we'll now transition to Maria Gaspar's work.
I think that's a great idea. And this is Margaret speaking. Thank you, William, for sharing this story about we call the police posters. I feel like that really gives another layer to the we call artists. I kind of thought it was a general artist call kind of thing, but it's really about like how artists can be part of shaping a community and keeping things safe and connected. So yeah, thank you so much. Okay, let's go to the next spot.
Super. I gotta stand right next to William. I gotta stand right next to William since we're sharing the mic.
A community theater thing, our virtual tour.
We're still getting used to the choreography of it all.
So beautiful. Okay, so I'll just start us off with a verbal description. This is a piece called Hovering Cloud. And it is a huge, large-scale piece of Pablo Picasso. It's hanging on a wall and the ends are kind of pooling on the ground. It's 13 by 11 feet, so it's a really grand scale. It has squares that are painted with a reddish brown paint, along with squares of blue, orange, pink, white, yellow, and green. And the whole thing is reinforced with tape kind of in between the squares. And so that's the verbal description for you all. I'll hand it over for William and Denny to discuss.
Thank you, Margaret. This is Denise speaking. So this is a work by Maria Gaspar, who is an artist here in Chicago, who primarily works in a social practice. And Maria is also a participant of Pros Arts. She participated as a teaching artist for Pros Arts. And this is a work that originally was hanging horizontally from the ceiling. And it's a work that she made while she was a teaching artist for Pros Arts in 2008. And so when we invited her to create a new work or just show some work that is evocative or evocative of prose arts. She contributed this piece, which I mentioned hangs horizontally from a ceiling, so it feels like a net in space. But since we don't have that kind of space here for that work to be shown in its original form, Maria then trimmed the work to fit this back wall. And the work is comprised or composed of papel picado, which is a traditional Mexican art that is 500 years old. Originally, it started off as cuts on bark, but with the development of paper, Mexican artisans transitioned to using tissue paper. And the tissue paper is ephemeral. It is something that deteriorates in the rain, in sunlight. We'll see papel picado in festivals ranging from Dia de los Muertos, Dia del Niño, weddings, all sorts of Mexican events or just celebrations in general. But there's multiple reversals happening with this piece. The tissue paper is now plastic, something that is more permanent. Instead of individual papel picado, it is all brought together as a screen, which I often say whenever I do tours, it's one that we can project all sorts of meaning, given that the meaning of this work has drastically shifted from when it was first shown in 2008. And often enough, when I'm doing tours, I'll talk to students and have them think about like what was happening in 2008 politically in the United States and socially as well too, and how that differs, how the meaning of this work differs today. Because there's multiple things here that are indicative of, say, American democracy, ranging from the flags. Perhaps we can zoom in a bit closer to the papel picado and we can show people
Yeah,
what
Denny
some of
made a
that. Oh
question
yeah,
about
I love this
about
camera.
design.
Dang, this is so good. But some of the flags are reversed. There's the US coat of arms that's upside down. The American flag is upside down as well too, which is indicative of protest as well too. But I'd love to hear your take on this, William.
Margaret, I know you had some questions.
Oh, yeah. No, this is Margaret speaking. I also just was curious about some of the cutout designs, and they mean like there's a human face. It looks like it. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be kind of a politician. I don't recognize the person,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I was looking at that same, this is William speaking. I was looking at that same one and I can't recognize that. Like, I know this looks like either it's Hidalgo or Madero, which are part of the Mexican Revolution. And it
Hmm.
says like Viva Mexico. And I see also there's like text says Batalla de Puebla, which is usually what's celebrated here when we celebrate like Cinco de Mayo or May 5th. But it's interesting, like of the symbolism, right, of these particular pieces and what is upside down and what isn't.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of the questions here too is thinking about, the symbolism of each of these particular papel picado or paper cutouts. And one of the things that's really that I'm really fascinated for this is that at that particular time in 2008, Maria also had a whole series so I've known Maria for a very long time. I've known her since I was like 14 years old. But a lot of the work that Maria was doing at that time was around like this brown series, and she did a lot of paper cutouts on plastic. And thinking about the color brown, right? And the symbolism of the color, the symbolism of the images that she was creating. And in this particular one, it was also like symbols, right? And what the symbolism of the images and like how they're related to culture. Now, the one thing that I was really interested in this particular piece and its relationship to prose arts is that at that particular time or prose arts, right, from 1978 until 2010, there wasn't many arts organizations in the city that really taught traditional Mexican art making practices, right? And Pros Arts was actually one of like 3 organizations at that time, 4 organizations maybe, that was doing papel picado, and that were actually keeping those traditions alive. And papel picado is usually used as a celebration, like you were saying, Denny, right? It's usually something that folks do as part of parties. And one of the things that I was really enamored by this particular piece was also the mention of how in 1995, Pros Arts was one of the first organizations that started celebrating Dia del Niño, Day of the Child, which is huge in Latin America and other parts of the globe. But here in Chicago, there wasn't tons of that celebration, but Pros Arts was one of the first organizations, along with Day of the Dead, right? They were actually the first organization in the city in the late 1970s to start doing a Day of the Dead celebration. The oldest one is in LA. That Self Graphics started it also around the 1970s, early 1970s, and then Pros Arts started it in the late 1970s. But yeah, I think these playfulness, right, on the use of el picado, the manufacturing of symbolism and culture, also there's like undertones of that. But I'm particularly also like really interested in the browning, right, the color brown, and as part of this larger pieces of conversations that she was having around this material and symbolism and culture. And the commodification of culture, but also, the acceptance and also the rejection, right, of the people whose cultures were represented as part of these particular pieces.
Margaret, any thoughts?
No, I'm just drinking it all in. I'm really curious about the significance of the color brown in some of the other pieces. I'm just like thinking about it. It looks like a rusty color brown. And so that feels like about exposure to, where the environment you're in, but I might just be riffing. Yeah.
Yeah. And also the color as well too has faded with time as well too. You'll sort of see like in one of the tiles or one of the papel picado at the top, the brown has peeled and the blue underneath has been exposed as well too. I think that's I don't know. I think there's meaning to that. I don't know what exactly it is too, but I think it speaks to longevity. Yeah.
And these particular, the papel picado itself, this is William Estrada speaking, they're supposed to be ephemeral too. They're not meant to last, right? They're meant to be created for that particular occasion, and then it disappears, right? Sometimes people take them home, sometimes they're left there, but most of the time they're taken and thrown away, right? So I think also like just it's the peeling of the responsiveness of the material to the environment, and also this was done in 2008, right? So thinking about how long, right? Like the longevity of the piece, right? And its response to time and shifting of, how it's been stored and, the different ways that it has lived as well from its an intentional, creation in 2008. But I love the playfulness of like these colors that are coming out, right? And what, like what fades and what has come out, and where the brown paint, because if I remember correctly, like they use like a spray, where it's coming out, and what
yeah. Perhaps we can transition to another work by Maria. This is Denny speaking, by the way.
Great.
Super.
Oh, good. I love this one. Oh, I think I'm not muted.
All right.
Do you want to announce it and then I'll do a description?
Yes, so this is another work by Maria Gaspar that we commissioned from her. This work was made in 2025. It is called De tu risa leve, que es como un cantar. Ella equita mi herida, todo, se olvida after CG.
Beautiful. Okay, so just a quick verbal description. The main kind of event is a black leather purse that's hanging from a wall hook. It's a beautiful wall hook. It's got like a pink flower with two green leaves. And the purse is just absolutely stuffed with deflated mylar balloons. They're gold, aqua, peach, deep blue, and red. And then there's two balloons that are kind of semi-inflated. At the beginning of this show, one of them was up in the ceiling with kind of a tendril of ribbon coming down, but now they've fallen to the ground. There's a blue star-shaped balloon that is got a little life in it. It's kind of floating above the ground. And then there's another kind of pentagon white balloon that is just laying on the floor.
So we invited Maria to create a new work for this exhibition. And this is among the first works that she showed us. And she's developing a body of work that is about her mother. And the wall labels that we have in the exhibition also have the artist's voice in them. This is something that we wanted to include in terms of thinking about what their response to prose arts' work is. And I think it's actually good for me to read what Maria wrote about this work. So Maria says, "My mother was a natural show person. She was a clown and a teacher for much of her life. I was a clown with her for several years when I was 5 to 7 years old. We performed shows in Little Village, where Maria was born, primarily at birthday parties for kids at her school. I didn't like it at the time because I was timid. When I was a young teaching artist, one of the most memorable experiences was learning how prose arts engaged with clowning. It revived my interest in performance because I recalled that prose arts and my mom used clowning similarly as a social practice. It felt radical and politically subversive in many ways to be doing performance and clowning with the students. Mainly because, as someone who grew up in the hood, being audacious, wild, and funny through art was not necessarily something that was accessible at the time. And I was teaching in those communities where the kids were so thrilled to have the opportunity to play and experiment and didn't follow a preconceived narrative. So the work speaks to the nature of how her mom really influenced her practice and the way that prose arts as well too influenced her work as an artist as well too. Perhaps, we could talk about how this is a very different form from the ways that Maria typically works. But also, one thing that I love about this work as well too is the balloons were once very alive, but throughout the span of the exhibition, they've just sort of deflated. And I think this room especially thinks about mourning and celebration in a lot of ways, whether it is with the papel picado that we just saw in the background, or even the ofrenda that we saw as well too. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, William, about grief, mourning, and celebration as you see it in this exhibition.
Yeah, I mean, I think Doña Carmen was a huge influence on Maria's practice, right? Continues being so. Yeah, I think for one of the things that I was thinking about this is the playfulness of the materials, right? And the glitteriness of the mylar balloons, right? But also thinking, yeah,
it's as if coming out,
uh-huh.
about to burst out of this.
And even like the purse, right? Like thinking about the contrast, right, of like the purse and how the purse looks weathered. But it's still open, and this beautiful rose flower here, that the purse is being hung from, and the attachment, right, to the actual balloon. It's kind of there, right, attaching to the actual purse itself, right.
Closer shot.
And
Umbilical.
yeah, yes. I like that one, Margaret. Thank you. But it's this playfulness, right? Of like the connection between the materials, the connection between the purse itself and, you know, like the childs, right? And the things that are born from these objects. But also the effect of time, right? The effect of time, the erasure of stories, right? Which is very cemented in the conversations that, you know, were had about this particular exhibition. And even thinking about the opening of the exhibition, right? That was one of the um, you know, limited moments, right? Where so many different prose arts, artists, community members, families, friends over the years, students came together and reformed relationships and sparked relationships that had been lost, right? Or that had been just, you know, separated by time. And I think this particular time, you know, particular piece in thinking about the mylar balloons themselves, right? And the way that one plays and shifts, right? The relationship of the materials due to the space, due to the weather, due to yeah, just the relationship of materials, right? And I think it's this beautiful remembrance, right, of that echoes of the love, right, that Maria has for her mom, but also thinking through, right, like different relationships, right, of like all the different moms and all the different families and parents, right, that we've that have encouraged us, that have seen us grown up, that have seen us you know, create our own paths, and prose arts being one of those familiar adults in our lives, right? As an organization and as Jean and Lionel and, you know, Alvia, Kaya, Susana, you know, all the different folks that were leading so many of us in the process of becoming an artist and becoming, you know, socially conscious of our work within the community. And I think this piece embodies a lot of those conversations and a lot of the ways that, you know, we're holding on and remembering and attempting to honor, right, the folks that have shaped our experiences through the work that we're generating.
That was beautiful, William. That was really beautiful. I think of this room as also there's an object in this room that is the heart of the exhibition, which is the ofrenda that is in the middle of the room as well too. Perhaps we'll transition there. We don't have that much time left, so I think after that we'll transition to the second room where we'll talk a little bit more about collective authorship and the way that this is embodied through some of the works of the artists that we chose for this exhibition. Excellent.
It's been lovely. Oh.
Super. So we are in front of the ofrenda that Prose Arts contributed to this exhibition. There's, I think, two objects that oh no, wait, there's three actually. There's three objects that we took from their archive, or yeah, three objects from their archive that are here. We have this ofrenda that they built. We also have a chest as well too, or a trunk with objects, props, books, all sorts of things that we've encouraged viewers to, or our audiences actually, to come grab costumes and take it with them. But I'll let Margaret actually provide a verbal description of the ofrenda.
I'm happy to. And also just, I feel like that we were like just enjoying this experience of doing the virtual tour on a hot mic. So I hope that you've been enjoying this as much as we have. But okay, there's so much beautiful detail here. So I'll do kind of like an overview, but I think for me, it's just so vibrantly colorful. There's all these beautiful colors, like we've got yellow, pink, orange, blue, green, and that's both just the tablecloth, which is kind of these woven squares, and the many different frames that are kind of around each of these post arts community members. A lot of them have pretty large tin frames that are textured and then colored with marker, I'm guessing. There's vases with flowers. There's like sugared candies in different shapes. There's plants, there's artwork, candles, flowers, just a lot of different ways of being tribute and gifts to these people that have been part of the community, kind of all layered onto the table. So I think I'll call that the image description for now, but maybe we can just say a little bit about anything that we're pointing out.
Yeah, there's these photographs that are framed in tin frames called hojalatas, which are also a traditional Mexican art as well too. There's sugar skulls as well too. It's an offering. It is an altar as well too. There's tobacco. There is what looks to be frankincense as well too. In the center of the ofrenda are a number of members who are honored, such as the Puerto Rican poet Salima Riviera. There is also Ruth Bauman, who was one of the co-founders of Prose Arts. There's Marisela Ochoa as well too. This ofrenda is also interactive as well too. We encourage our visitors to contribute to it. On the back, there is a section in which there's a number of letters that people have left, our visitors have left in dedication or in honor of those who have passed.
This is my thing. If I could read one of them, I'm holding one of the cards that's been left. The message says, "I wish you could see how far everyone come. We all miss you so much." And there's a heart and a little cat being drawn on there. So, yeah.
Yeah, William. I'd love to hear what you think about this ofrenda, or even who do you know some of the people who are honored here? One of the spaces that's also honored, it's not people only. There's spaces such as Casa Atzlan, which was a cultural center in Pilsen. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this ofrenda is so beautiful. And one of the things that I really, yeah, there's so many folks, right, that are being honored here. Like I'm thinking of Carlos Cortez, which was printmaker here in Chicago that was born in Milwaukee and has worked in Pilsen, particular, for many, many years, and trained and was a big inspiration to many of the printmakers here in Chicago. We have Panchito, Francisco Mendoza, which was an art teacher at Orozco Fine Art School in Pilsen, and along with Cynthia Weiss from CPAG, did a lot of mosaics in the city. And it was part of the CPAG, Chicago Public Art Group. We have Jose Gonzalez, which was an artist and organizer here in Chicago and created one of the first Mexican art institutions on the southeast side of Chicago, which eventually a form of that ended up becoming the National Museum of Mexican Fine Arts, what we know now. But Jose started the first arts institution that really celebrated Mexican art. We have Jeff Maldonado, which was a young artist and the son of Jeff Maldonado Senior, which is a muralist and a Chicago icon as well. We have El Centro de la Causa, which was an arts organization, a social, a community social artist non-for-profit that was here in Chicago on 18th and 17th and Halsted. They did a lot of the work in the 1970s around Chicanismo and a lot of the supported a lot of artists throughout the years. And a lot of the work they were doing was also in thinking about providing social services and arts programming, education, legal help for community members for free, right? And this is a very emotional ofrenda for me, right? There's a lot of connections, a lot of friendships, that I think about and I like remember and cherish. But one of the things too that I love the hojalata was because we would do all these, sugar skull workshops. We would do hojalata workshops for community members. And also like teach, I learned how to make ofrendas because of Pros Arts, right? And it's something that I've continued over the last 30 years in continuing to teach the ofrendas, the different levels of the ofrendas, how to make sugar skulls and the cultural meaning of sugar skulls. Yeah, so I think the particular piece and the way that it's also open for community members to add to it is very much in the spirit, right, of the work that Pros Arts has done and continue to do and continues to live in all of us and now everyone whose work has been touched by by working with them or learning about their work.
Yeah, perhaps you could talk to us about Kasats and what that was and how it's connected to ephemerality.
Yeah, Kazakhstan was a cultural space that was on Racine and right off of 18th Street. And the history of Kazakhstan is immense. But it was a cultural space and a community space where there was ceramics, artists had studios in there. There was theater that would happen. A lot of cultural organizations would use this space to meet. Artists would use it to organize, to have meetings, to have, also parties, right? And we get there and celebrate each other. But this was a huge space in the Pilsen neighborhood that was used for many, many decades as a cultural hub for a lot of artists to learn how to teach, for a lot of artists to meet other artists and get past information around like how to paint murals, how to be an exhibiting artist. There was also exhibition space. And fortunately, we lost it to developers and to the gentrification, the displacement of community members in Pilsen. But it continues, right? It continues through the work that folks are doing, and yeah, and there's like new places that have been born out of the need, right, to preserve a lot of the history of Kazakhstan. Yeah, and there's so many. Yeah, there was a. Every year they would have a pozolada, where artists would get together and people would do ceramic bowls. And we would spend like 3 days, all just a bunch of community members coming in and artists doing ceramic bowls. We would fire them, and then we would actually have they would make pozole, which is a traditional like stew, and then we would do a fundraiser, right, as part of the Casa Slan as a way for us to raise funds for the space itself. And that went on for years, right? That was one of the things that we knew we had to do at a particular time of the year. But yeah, Casa Slan is such an important iconic cultural space that so many artists were relying on and that we can try to continue to honor through the work that is being done in communities.
Thank you for sharing that, William. Kazakhstan also appears elsewhere in the exhibition. I should also mention there is a video that we have in the final room of the exhibition that is documentation of the 1997 Dia de los Muertos parade, which starts off in Dvorak Park, where young students, young kids are having their faces painted with calaveras, and then they head on out to the streets with buckets, plastic buckets and drumsticks, and they're performing, and they eventually end up at Kasatslan, where there is a performance. So we have just about 10 minutes left. I think we'll transition to one more room where we'll talk about collective authorship, and our final program for learning to get, or sheesh, for Imagination Doctors. Thanks. Super.
Okay, we're here. Okay, hi, this is Margaret speaking. Okay, so this is Leticia Pardo, Exquisite Corpse. I wonder if it's not too much trouble if we can get a little closer. This is really just such a beautiful piece. Okay, great. We've got the Zoom going. Okay, so quick verbal description is this is a piece that's 6 cream-colored plaster cast rectangles, and they're positioned together to make one long rectangle. And different shapes and objects are embedded or have made an impression in the plaster. So from left to right, there's paint can lids, a fish tail, lathe and plaster like an old wall, fingers holding an object, a rotary phone, twisting pipes, a kazoo, a suitcase with an old Oxford shoe, and then something I can't I can't figure out what it is. It might be the head of the fish. It also kind of looks like a duck to me, so it's some kind of creature. But yeah. And then there's a poem that is kind of alongside, installed alongside, and I would love to hear more about it.
Thank you, Margaret. This is Denise speaking. So, like Margaret mentioned, this is a work called Exquisite Corpse. It is by the artist Leticia Pardo, who is an artist and architect here in Chicago and in Indiana as well too. A little bit of background, Leticia worked with us as the exhibition designer for Learning Together. We couldn't have done it without her in terms of thinking about this history and making the exhibition more accessible for everybody in terms of like a spatial experience. Given that she's an artist who thinks about space, she essentially went to visit Prose Art's studio and met the ensemble and decided to mold and cast many objects that she was really drawn to. Like Margaret mentioned, so like in this one section, this is a pair of binoculars. This is a fish, a tail of a fish, or the tail of a fish prop, a crack in the wall, a hole in the wall, et cetera, et cetera. And she put it together to form this body of a fish. And then she assigned each member of Prose Arts each tile. And then she prompted the members of Prose Arts to play the game of Exquisite Corpse. Exquisite Corpse is a parlor game that was established by the Surrealist movement, Surrealist artists such as André Breton. And they would play this game as a way of tapping into their imagination, tapping into the unconscious. And it's a very co-authored game, a very collective game. So for example, I would write a sentence on a piece of paper. We would start off with a piece of paper, start off with a sentence, and then I would fold the piece of paper, pass it on to the next person who wouldn't know what the first sentence is, fold it, pass it on to the next person until it's back to me. So the same thing happened with this work. So like I mentioned, each tile was assigned to a member of Prose Arts, and they wrote a line about each tile. So I'm actually going to read the poem, and perhaps you, the viewer, can make an association between each line and perhaps which tile it pairs with, if that makes sense. Yeah. All right.
Mhm.
Are we good, Gianna? Awesome. So here's a poem, a very whimsical one. Flip-flop through the water, turning into flowers. Into flowers. A suitcase filled with imaginary innard, understood only by the initiated, and children with an innate understanding of insanity. The bellows bellowed baby, powder, poof, poof, making clouds. In a star-filled night, when suddenly the phone rang. Hello? You don't say. You don't say. You don't say. Who was it? They didn't say. They didn't say, but the kazoo hummed. Tap, tap, tap. Puppet pops out of the box. The chain waits the clown and the horn. Did it blow? Yes, right through the crack on the wall. I guess I need to fix it. First, I gotta look in the suitcase with these blind binoculars, and surely I'll see nothing. If there's nothing to fix. Question, how do you fix nothing? So this is honestly one of my favorite works in the exhibition. Um, it's such a clever and conceptually rich work in terms of thinking about collective authorship, which is something that is a theme in this exhibition, I should say. It is something that is a part of Prose Arts. They did everything collectively. They don't speak of themselves as a singular person. They always make decisions in a collective manner. Um, and I'll also mention that our final program for this exhibition is an ecstatic evening. That's the title of the program. It takes place on March 19th at 5:30 p.m. We will have the UIC choir actually breathe life into this exquisite corpse. We'll also have other exhibiting artists in the exhibition, such as Alberto Aguilar, who will do a puppet show with three of his students who contributed a video for this exhibition as well, to thinks about collective authorship as well. We'll also have Jean Carlos Claudio of La Vuelta Ensemble, who will perform a work that thinks about his migration or reflects on his migration from Puerto Rico to the United States and blends poetry, bomba music, and coffee as well too. We'll also have the artist Maya Wen also perform as well too. I greatly encourage you all to come to us then. But I actually love to hear William's thoughts, especially in this room, since we're not really talking about other things. But you can actually talk to us about this prop behind us, the lavanderia, and how collective authorship is something that is so crucial and a big part of prose arts.
Hi, this is William Estrada. Yes, I think very much to Leticia Pardo's piece and this Lavanderia stage that was created by, who was this created by?
It was Lionel who designed it,
Lionel.
but
Mhm.
prose arts.
Yeah, I think part of there's a lot of there's a lot of collective decision making that happens through prose arts, right? Like from the way that the work is going to be generated to, bringing in students, community members, depending on where the work is happening, into the generative process of like ideation, right? And thinking through like, how do we want to, what kind of questions do we want to ask? What are the materials that we're interested in exploring, playing with? What are the curiosities that we want to engage with, not only as the teachers or the adults in the room, but also, with the community members, with the students that we're working with. And I think a lot of this process, right, is really making it while we're building it, right? Like thinking about it while we're building it, and not necessarily knowing where things are going to end up, but being flexible and trusting the process that everyone involved is an expert in this work, that we're going to be making these decisions and building this together, right? And then also even just to the point of like whether we're making the decision that we have to stop because of time or because there's like this will meet the things that we need in order to move forward with whatever project we're working with. And a lot of the way that pros arts function, right, from the administrative work to the programming to the way that we knew we were gonna show up to a residency, and we knew that the residency was gonna take place in elementary school, but we knew that we might make potentially a mural or we might make a theater piece, but we weren't sure what it was going to be about yet, right? So it was through the discussions, right, that we had with students, with teachers, with the, principals, that then we were like, oh, this is, we're engaging, this this book of literature, or, you're talking a lot about refugees, so we're gonna engage with the concept of like, what is refugee? Why do people need refugee status, right? Like what kind of conversations do we need to have about that? What are the questions that you have as a student, as the adults in the room, as the teachers, as the artists? What are the questions that we have about that? But I think one of the things that I really love about this particular stage, this lavanderia, and in the spirit of Leticia's work, is the playfulness of it, right? And the functionality too, right? Of, the way that it exists. And I don't know, you're not able to see it right now, but this actually functions, right? For it to, when it closes, it actually has the window that says,
So this is Margaret. We're kind of playing with a 3D model of a lavanderia, and
yes.
it's closed, and there's a sign up on it that says closed.
Yeah. And you have the window, right, of like looking inside of the lavanderia, and then one of the doors that says like closed. But it's this playfulness, right, of like this modality. That I know for me, it influenced a lot of my own practice and a lot of the work, the way that I think about my work, and the way that, we create things in order to fit the different things that we need them to fit, but, and yeah, it's just so much fun, and you want to play with it, you want to touch it. And all those things were encouraged to happen when you were working with prose arts, right? There was a lot of laughter, there was a lot of fun, there was a lot of joy, and all of that was celebrated and encouraged as part of the teaching and making process.
Thank you, William. I think we might be out of time.
We are out of time. Yeah, I want to thank you both. This has been such a lovely tour, and especially the last piece. I've been wondering about the name, The Imagination Doctor, the whole time. But that poem is kind of saying, like, we don't even need to fix anything. Like, there's nothing to fix. Anyway, I'm just still rattling around with some of these beautiful ideas. I think we have a feedback form. It may have been put in the chat. If you're still here, folks on Zoom, we'd love to hear what your experience was. But mostly, I just want to thank William and Denny and our lovely camera people and like tech people behind the scenes for making this happen. I want to thank everyone for joining us. And definitely, if you're able to get here, check it out. There's a lot more in the show. I think it's running through March 21st.
Yes, it closes March 21st. We're open on Saturdays from 12 to 5 p.m. And then on Tuesdays through Fridays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Amazing. Okay, thank you all.
Super.
Great to be together.
Thank you all for coming.